Geneve Flynn is a two-time Bram Stoker Award and Shirley Jackson Award-winning editor, author, and poet. Her works have been nominated and shortlisted for the British Fantasy, Ditmar, Aurealis, Australian Shadows, Elgin, and Riesling Awards, and the Pushcart Prize. She is a recipient of the 2022 Queensland Writers' Fellowship. Genevieve, it's all yours.
Thank you. I'm going to read from my story, Lidless Eyes at Sea, that I'm very pleased to say has been shortlisted for the Aurealis Award, and it appears in From the Wasteland. So first, a bit about the inspiration behind the story. All through Eliot's poem, there are themes of brokenness and loss, of culture, of memory, of connection. He wrestles with war, moral decay, and resurrection. These grim images created a backdrop for my horror tale about a woman and a boy, and the story they tell each other over and over again as they try to survive a post-apocalyptic world. For my story, I was inspired by Eliot's line, pressing lidless eyes and waiting for a knock upon the door. Instead of a weary couple battling insomnia, I imagined a character waiting with dread for a final knock. I was also struck by the line, "Who is the third who walks always beside you?" I began to ask myself if we are truly alone, and who might walk beside us in silence. This gave me my first line. We are silently going mad, the boy and I. I dreamt the opening image of a boy handing a woman a silk handkerchief containing broken dentures. At the time of writing, I also took a workshop with Karen Warren, one of Australia's most celebrated horror authors, and the motifs of the teeth and iron spike were born. Here we go. We are silently going mad, the boy and I. The first sign was when he brought me the red silk handkerchief. It was folded and tied like the most perfect furoshiki cloth wrapping, as if he meant to give me something precious, something with meaning. Here is what I found instead. 7 pieces of a broken denture, fragments of palate, glistening pink as freshly chewed bubblegum, and wire that still shone gold, cradling teeth as jagged and yellow as fossilized popcorn. With a wordless cry, I crushed them under my boot, grinding the molars to ochre pebbles and chalk. He did not seem to mind and returned to picking his way carefully through the ruins of the supermarket. A month ago, I found him in a playground, both of us slat-sided and ravenous. We stared at each other, a small dark-eyed boy in a man's too large jacket, and me, a woman who had become nothing but dry bones. He didn't say a word. Whether the mutism was selective or inborn, it made no difference. No matter how much I questioned, cajoled, or tried to catch him unawares, he did not speak. At first, the disappointment hollowed me as powerfully as the endless hunger. I had been alone since the final days of the war. To have someone, anyone to talk with, to feel some remnant of my humanity, would have been as much a boon as discovering an untouched cache of tin peaches in an abandoned house. Before long, though, his simple presence proved enough, and I fell back into the habit of silence. We learned to hunt. He was faster than I, and as a child, swifter to reclaim the animal instincts we have forgotten as a species. Often he would take a rabbit or a snake with his teeth and be halfway through its neck before I caught up. The meager game wasn't enough, and we spent our days hiking from one dusty town to the next, searching lonely houses that echoed with memories and darkened stores with shattered windows for anything we could eat. On the rare occasions we came across other people, his hackles would ripple and he'd drag me to the ground, where we huddled until whoever it was had passed. I never questioned him. He had a fine nose for danger and knew what and who could be trusted. Later that night, with nothing to show from the supermarket, and hunger clawing us both, we curled together in the parlour of a turn-of-the-century Queenslander at the edge of town, its rotting, creaking boards enough to warn us if someone approached. Any mattresses and blankets from the bedrooms had long been scavenged, and only the skeletons of small reptiles and hard pellets of rat scat remained. The chill crept up from the gaps in the floor and in through the glasses windows. A gum tree rustled its ghostly leaves outside. Everything else was still. I shivered against his small form, but the boy seemed immune to the cold. Tell me a story, I thought. A wish upon a star, nothing more. To my surprise, he turned and studied me, his eyes like liquid mirrors reflecting the moonlight. A single considered nod, then he snuggled back against me and fell asleep. A quiet knock sounds at the front door, barely there, as if it didn't really happen. Sunlight streaming through the windows, the day's humidity and heat suddenly pressing against my skin. The boy's gone, an empty space between my arms, even though I had folded them around him in my sleep. Across from me is the denture, whole and gleaming. It sits inside a wooden bowl which has been nailed to the floor with a thick iron stake, about 6 inches in length and black with oxidization. Around the false jaw, cracked plastic containers and toy fragments are arranged in the unmistakable shape of a human skull. There's a nose, a chin, rudimentary ears, even wiry doll hair, but no eyes. Sweat springs on my upper lip and prickles down my spine. I creep to my feet and peer through the doorway to the darkened hall, careful to tread close to the wall. The boards protest quietly. The house feels empty, apart from the facsimile mind behind me, watching my back with its empty sockets. It isn't alive. I know that. I do. It grins with pink gums and yellow teeth. With a grunt, I rush forward and claw at the pieces of plastic and broken remnants that once belonged to children, hurling them into the shadow corners of the room and out the window. I yank at the dentures, but hiss, snapping my hand back. Did they bite me? No, it was only a sharp edge on the nail head. A cut jags across my palm. Blood wells. It's deep. I really should get a tetanus shot. It wouldn't do to die from being unable to eat. Laughter bubbles up in my throat and fills my mouth, but I swallow it down. I'll have to go back into town to find something to bandage my hand. Perhaps the boy is already there, searching for food. He's disappeared before, sometimes for an hour, sometimes the whole day, but he always returns. He always finds me. I glance at the set of teeth. They aren't going anywhere. Thank you.